Bob in Skokie, Illinois. Thanks for watching Free Speech TV, Bob. What's up?
Hey, how are you, Tom?
Fine.
Listen, I first of all, I agree with you on most everything, but you had Max Blumenthal on a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounded like you agreed more or less with a lot he had to say. And I just have to tell you a couple of things that were really distressing to me. First of all, to compare Gaza to the Warsaw Ghetto, which was done, is absolutely absurd. Anybody who would think that the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto had any way of attacking the Nazis on the outside of the Warsaw Ghetto, which is what Gaza can do now, is I think, really stretching it to say the least.
I would there were uprisings in the Warsaw Ghetto, and B,
nobody inside the Warsaw
there
Ghetto
is nobody in Gaza who can successfully harm Israel right now. They might throw some rockets out there,
but they've been firing rockets since the day after the Israelis left on their own volition 10 years ago, and which brings up a second point. To call that book, I don't know what it was, 51 Days or whatever.
Right, 51 Day War.
And Max said, well, the Israelis decided that they'd had enough, so they went in one day, and then the next day the rockets started flying from Gaza. Again, Tom, the rockets have been flying out of Gaza since 10 years ago.
No, they've been a long pause,
Bob.
Bob.
You're right in the sense that they can't do much as much damage as probably one Israeli attack can.
Bob,
nonetheless,
setting aside the semantic argument about whether or not Israel is an apartheid state or whether the Gaza is better or worse than the Warsaw Ghetto, what is your solution for this?
My solution is what happened in Egypt 30 years ago, and that is that some Palestinian leader is going to arise, come to their senses, and say, you know what, let's make peace with the Israelis. And the reason I say that, Tom, is that in the last 15 years alone, the Palestinians have been offered by the Israeli government in power, and they were not the same type of government in both cases. One was Olmert, and the other was Barak. They were offered half of Jerusalem and 97% of what they wanted on the West Bank, and they said no. And the reason they said no is that, frankly, and you probably will disagree, they don't want part of Israel back. They don't want the right to return. They want the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'll say one more
Bob,
thing.
there is no they. There is no monolithic they. You have,
right,
just like in Israel, you have all these different factions. In Gaza, you've got all these different factions. On the West Bank, you've got all these different factions. There is no they.
Tom, that if an election were held in Gaza and on the West Bank as to who they wanted in power, that Hamas would win, and you know what Hamas is all about. Come on, I mean you're not naive, and I know that you're a brilliant guy, and that's why I continue to watch you every day. They don't want part of what is now known as Israel. They want the whole thing back.
But they're not going to get the whole thing, Bob.
Until they get leaders who really want to have a peace. Because the Israeli public is tired of all this. They would throw out a government if there was really somebody to make peace with. They really would, Tom.
You know, Bob, I used to spend a lot of time in Israel, and I used to share your point of view. I just have to say I no longer do. I don't believe that there's all that evil faith exclusively on the Palestinian side and all this good faith exclusively on the Israeli side. I think that there's bad faith on both sides. We'll be back.